This holiday season, Lululemon makes it easy to give a gift that goes beyond the moment they open it. There's the sound of them unboxing super soft Lululemon loungewear. And then, there's the sound of them slipping into deep recovery mode after every workout. With Lululemon, the real gift happens when they're living in it. Open the moment. Shop now at Lululemon.com.
Welcome back to the Epic Universal Podcast. I'm entertainment writer Jim Hill, and this is the podcast where we cover the latest Universal news, rumors, and history. And as always on the show, I'm joined by my able-bodied co-host, Eric Hersey. And so this show is going to drop on the actual weekend that Wicked has finally opened in theaters, right?
Right, Jim. What are we going to do? We're going to have to fill like 45 minutes worth of content each week because we won't have Wicked news.
Well, no. Again, you've forgotten part 2 is coming out. In fact, November 21st, 2025. So speaking of which, might be a smart time now to get online for that.
Right.
Because Universal is anticipating this one does very, very well, folks. And likewise, you'll come out next year to find out what happened next to Elphaba and Galinda. Because face it, there are people on the planet who haven't actually seen the show on Broadway, the touring companies and that sort of thing. So yeah, they're going to wonder what happens next. So
no, so I mean, I believe we're gonna end up seeing it. We're gonna venture out. My daughter has already said that we're gonna go see this, and I'm sure my wife and everyone else. So we'll see and probably report back the next show what we think. I have no idea what I'm gonna think. It could go either way. Like, I love a good musical, but it doesn't seem like it's necessarily geared towards the 40-year-old male. But heck if I know. Jim, you know what? I saw this a while back. Did our friend Drew actually see this movie already? I swear he put something on Twitter before that he saw it.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Maybe we should bring Drew on to talk about this film at some point. That's an excellent idea. Let's look at doing that for a future show. But yeah, so we're now finally here, folks. So in the moment, Wicked has gone from something that's being hyped to an actual product. So we'd love to hear what you think of it. And speaking of hyping things, got to work in an ad break here. And of course, want to mention that the Epic Universal Podcast is brought to you by touringplans.com. And Touring Plans helps you save time. It helps you save money when you're visiting theme parks like Universal and, of course, the Fort Walt Disney World. So please check them out at touringplans.com. Okay, back to you now, Eric. You had picked out some interesting news stories for us to discuss.
Oh, we got some interesting ones, Jim. We got some interesting news stories for sure.
Okay, and this one we're going to start off with. I'm trying not to be frightened of the future, but talk to me about what I'm about to encounter at the Universal Parks.
Well, so they're installing the facial recognition cameras at the express lanes. So I don't know how. Just this recent trip, and I don't know how long ago they installed facial recognition at the front of the park, but it was actually a pretty seamless process. You know, with Disney, you're using your fingerprints, and they'll take your picture if necessary to put it on an iPad. But this one was actually a pretty decent process where you basically stand there, they take your picture, it links up, and you move on your way. So it appears that they have already started installing these at some of the like express lanes, but they haven't used them yet, right? They just kind of started those. So
yeah, now
oddly enough, they started in DreamWorks Land.
Well, again, newer section of the park. Probably easier to put them in. Getting ready for the opening in June, wasn't it?
Yeah. And so they started it, and I mean, we went to Trolls Roller Coaster, right? And I guess the line built up. We went the first time we went, it was. By the time we got there, it was like an hour wait. But then the next time we went, we rope dropped it. And we did it, I think, 3 times in a row. They didn't even make us get off. We were just there early. So I guess that's going to be like a high point for Express. But you almost feel like this technology, you wouldn't have to put it in every single one. But they put it in Trolls Roller Coaster and then the Imagination Celebration Theater, which just seems odd to me. that you're really going to have to enforce that hardcore. And then in August, they did a Revenge of the Mummy entrance. And then just recently, they put it by my beloved E.T. Adventure. So it's just, I guess maybe like I'm confused on it, but I guess it's their new way of their tap points. They're just going to use the face instead of like, what are they doing now? Because we didn't buy the Express Pass. Like, how do they? Is it a badge that it's now?
Well, what kind of always intrigues me about these sorts of decisions is it's like, okay, why this? Why now? I mean, for example, installing facial recognition with ET Adventure, which again is an attraction from 1990. So the whole notion of, I'm not sure there's demand there that would necessitate we need to really enforce the express pass. But on the other hand, if you make the jump to the next generation of what people are looking to do in theme parks, I mean, the fact that they're installing this facial recognition stuff in ET, suddenly has interesting implications. I mean, face it, you've done ET, so you've done the you hand in the pass, and then ET says your name at the end of the ride.
Oh, absolutely,
Okay.
Jim. Yeah, I mean, we're best buds. He says Eric almost every time.
Okay. Well, imagine now if you didn't actually, thanks to the Express Pass and facial recognition, you didn't have to do any of that. You just got on the ride, and ET then pivoted you and said, "Eric Hersey, nice to see you."
Right.
This could be interesting.
Right. It's just an interesting mode. I think it'll be fine. And at this point in time, anybody that's fighting this technology probably didn't get in the park because you already had to do it. So it's just another easy way maybe to streamline it. And I don't know if I just couldn't imagine how it was being abused, but I haven't used it yet. I think the next time we're going to try to do something like that so I can say, hey, this is what it was. But we'll see. We'll keep an eye on this story, and I'm sure they'll be popping up everywhere else.
Okay, cool. All right, now, but again, show's getting posted on the November 22nd, so we're just days away from Thanksgiving beginning, and of course that's the key of the holidays. And this next story keys off of something that people have thought of as a holiday tradition at Universal that they looks like they're going to have to do without this year, right?
Yeah, not anymore. Mannheim Steamroller not coming back. And that's kind of disappointing because we're going to be heading there in about a week. And I was hoping that they would be, and it wasn't like they were performing every day, but there were some significant nights where they were performing in the theater right off of the studio production area. So they decided that they're not coming back. And I think it was mentioned on a forum, a Universal representative says, we're constantly evaluating our entertainment experiences and have decided to forego offering evening performances at the Music Plaza stage in Universal Studios Florida as part of this year's holiday celebration. So
okay, and
first Mannheim Steamroller, the songs were taken away from the Osborne Lights, and now they're physically gone. So we're just losing all Mannheim Steamroller in Orlando.
And
sad day.
Well, maybe. All right. Look, I covered a number of holiday events at Universal, and they were very kind. They invite Nancy and I down, but invariably, as part of these, we would get a wonderful place to watch the Mannheim Steamroller concert, and we'd have to do it every year. And I'm sorry. After about year 5, it's like, oh, come on, I've been good. Don't make me watch Mannheim Steamroller again. Because, again, they specialized in so many Christmas songs are cute and little and small. And it's just sort of like, oh, my God. Do we need the 35-minute long version of God Rest Ye Merry Gentlemen? God, come on, move it along.
Right. Well,
I'm not going to lie to you. There's some of us, it's like, oh, Mannheim Steamroller is not coming back. Yay!
Well, they didn't name a replacement, so that's what's interesting. But we'll see. Maybe they'll come back in another year and
quiet. No. Wonderful idea. Time for a break. Okay, go ahead. Absolutely.
Well, Jim, did you see this next story? I think this is one of the more interesting and unfortunate stories, but it certainly happened. We could talk about it on the day of the release.
Okay. And I have to admit, I'm intrigued by this one because I'm not buying the explanation. We'll explain what we're talking about here.
All right, so Mattel,
Mm-hmm.
false print error. So
Mm-hmm.
basically, what happened? There were some wicked dolls, and there was some packaging, and unfortunately, there was an adult site that when you would go to the website, it would actually take you to an adult site, which obviously infuriated probably many parents of those that they bought the doll for.
Mm-hmm.
So you end up going to a pornographic website instead of the official movie site.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it was intended for children 4 and up. So we have some 4-year-olds that might have been trying to do this. And I'm not sure if it was a QR code.
Mm-hmm.
I imagine it was, and it automatically took you there. So it leads and it caused some significant issues there. So
Mm-hmm.
Mattel was just advising customers who purchased the doll to dispose or just cover up the link on the back. So I can't imagine they're still producing. I don't know if they pulled them from the shelves, but very unfortunate. But this was all over the news when you typed in "wicked," wicked news, which many people in not a good look.
Okay. Now, I'm just going to put this out there that you know the story about the original Little Mermaid poster, right?
I do.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. And the story always there is disgruntled employee who was being asked to rush and decided to get back at the man and put a phallic symbol in the background. I think at some point we're going to hear the story about what went on here, and somebody at Mattel, as they were headed out the door, it's like, hey, I'm going to change this address.
I agree with you, Jim. I think that seems a lot more logical than accidental.
Yeah. So can't wait for can't wait for the real story here.
Right, but I would say if you have one of those, I would put it away. I think when it comes to collector items, this is a rarity that you have that is like if it's a normal doll and everybody buys it and you buy one to play with and you buy one to keep, those don't necessarily become collectors because there's too many people that do that. But in this case, these are things that you're not going to find a reprint of this. So keep a hold.
Well, okay. I always feel bad for the people who thought that they'd be paying for their kids' college education with their Beanie Babies.
Yeah.
But this might be one of those situations that actually does.
Right.
All right. So, all right. Circling back to the parks now. We have some news from across the sea, right? From Universal Studios Japan.
Right, Jim. I was just scrolling through and you saw Donkey Kong. So first I'm like, oh, they're showing us some stuff from Epic, and that wasn't necessarily the case. This is actually they have a Donkey Kong themed land over in Universal Studios Japan, and they have it's a mine cart madness ride, which doesn't look to be the same as what we're getting here, but I'm not too sure. I watched a couple videos, and at the time of recording, they really just gave us a little preview. They showed us a little bit of the track, like the carts that you drive by in the queue. So we haven't seen it yet, but they did let some select vloggers and so forth in there. And really, really immersive, really cool. And I thought it was just a nice little touch to say, all right, this is some of the stuff maybe that we'll be getting here in Florida.
Yeah, but the story here, though, I think is that, remember, this was originally supposed to open in the spring of this year, and now we now have an opening date of December 11th. Is that correct? Is that what they're saying?
That's what they were saying, right?
Yeah. So this thing is, if I'm working the math politely, 6 months late, possibly 7 or 8 months late. And don't get me wrong, I've heard spectacular things about the Donkey Kong attraction. But the other thing, to be frank here, is that what I've also heard is that it's a low capacity, slow loading ride. And so, as wonderful as this might be, I always get a little concerned when you've designed a wonderful ride that only, if you're lucky, a quarter of a third of the guests that are in the park every day can get to experience. So I am hoping that the folks who are opening Epic Universe are paying very close attention to what the folks in Japan are doing, because they are ridiculously efficient over there when it comes to operating attractions. Making sure ride vehicles go out fully packed, that sort of thing. So whatever lessons they learn from Universal Studios Japan in regard to operating Donkey Kong to have it at full capacity all day long. Geez, I hope those lessons come very quickly our way, and are applied to what's going to happen at Epic Universe.
Right, because that's going to be a signature attraction down here,
That
the
it
Donkey
is.
Kong. I mean,
That
just seeing
it
the
is.
technology and and so for everybody's going to want to do it. So if you get your one day at Epic, 1 out of 3, when you get it, you're going to want to do that ride. So let's hope it's at capacity and they're running it smoothly. So we'll give them. Let's see what they can cook up before May.
There we go. And with that, folks, we've completed the news portion of today's show. And when we get back from this ad break, we're going to circle back to a topic we touched on an earlier Epic Universal podcast, which is that Alfred Hitchcock making a movies attraction at Universal Studios Florida. But first, this.
This episode is brought to you by Skinny Pop Popcorn. Perfectly popped, endlessly delicious. Oh, so light and crunchy. Skinny Pop Original Popcorn is the snack you've been searching for. Made with just 3 simple ingredients: popcorn kernels, sunflower oil, and salt. Snacking never felt or tasted so good. Perfectly popped, endlessly delicious. Give yourself permission to snack and pick up Skinny Pop Original Popcorn today.
My dad works in B2B marketing. He came by my school for career day and said he was a big ROAS man. Then he told everyone how much he loved calculating his return on ad spend. My friends still laugh at me to this day.
Not everyone gets B2B, but with LinkedIn, you'll be able to reach people who do. Get a $100 credit on your next ad campaign. Go to linkedin.com/campaign to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/campaign. Terms and conditions apply. LinkedIn, the place to be.
This episode is brought to you by Netflix. From the co-director of Shrek and the visionary behind Toy Story comes Spellbound, a magical new animated adventure starring Rachel Zegler, John Lithgow, Jennifer Lewis, Nathan Lane, and Titus Burgess with Javier Bardem and Nicole Kidman. When a powerful spell turns her parents into monsters, Princess Elian must journey into the wild to reverse the curse before it's too late. Watch Spellbound only on Netflix November 22nd.
And we're back. Okay, so just to get into it here, folks, on a recent Epic Universal podcast, Eric and I talked about that Alfred Hitchcock, The Art of Making Movies attraction. That's a thing that got replaced by Shrek 4D and more recently became home to, what was it? Minion
Villain Con.
There
right?
we go. Minion Blast Villain Con. But back in the day, The Art of Making Movies is tribute to Alfred Hitchcock. It was part 3D movie, part live action show. And according to what Universal's PR team said, it celebrated the 43 years that this, of course, master filmmaker was associated with Universal Studios, and Eric, I have a teeny bit of a problem with that statement because if we're being completely honest here, it plays fast and loose with Hollywood history. And all right, to explain, uh, Alfred Hitchcock career starts in the UK. He makes wonderful movies over there in the 20s and the 30s, and he finally arrives in Hollywood in 1940, where after making 2 movies for United Artists, and he makes Rebecca and Foreign Correspondence for that studio, and then he makes 2 more movies. These are at RKO with Mr. and Mrs. Smith and Suspicion. This is now, finally, when he finds himself working for Universal Pictures, where, again, repeating his previous pattern, he now makes 2 movies for Universal, Saboteur and Shadow of a Doubt. So, okay, he gets those 6 films in Hollywood under his belt, and then he spends the next 2 decades largely working for everybody else in town except Universal. I mean,
Okay.
I mean, for example, he makes 7 movies over at Warner Brothers. He makes The Wrong Man. He makes Dial M for Murder. I Confess, Strangers on a Train, Stage Fright, Under Capricorn, and Rope. And then he makes 6 movies for Paramount. He makes Psycho, Vertigo, The Man Who Knew Too Much, The Trouble with Harry, and To Catch a Thief, and Rear Window. Rear Window. And then you get 4 other movies for majors out in Hollywood. He does Lifeboat at 20th Century Fox. He does North by Northwest for MGM. Notorious, he does that one back at RKO. He wind up doing 3 movies total for that studio. And then there's a Paradigm Case, which he does for the Selznick organization. And Hitchcock winds up making 3 movies for David Selznick. But as for Universal, Eric, if we go from August of 1942, which is when production of Shadow Without wraps up, and then March of 1962, which is when production of The Birds begins, Hitchcock has little, if anything, to do with the film side of Universal. Now, on the other hand, if we're talking about the television side of Universal, well, entirely different story. In this case, Eric, have you ever seen any episodes of Alfred Hitchcock Presents, that black and white TV show?
I'm sure I have, because I ended up talking with my brother, and it sounds like my mom was big into this, so I probably watched a ton when I was young.
Okay.
But it stares at me on one of the streaming services every time I get on there, so it wants me to watch it. So I think we're going to make that happen.
Okay. Well, this show debuts in October of 1955, and Hitchcock actually shoots it at Universal. And it's hugely popular. It actually runs for 10 years. Now, mind you, a couple of those years it runs on NBC, but then it goes back to CBS. But again, a TV anthology show, hugely popular. And Hitchcock really enjoys working with the TV people over at Universal. In fact, so much that when Paramount tells him, look, this Psycho movie you want to make, Alfred, it's out there. I don't know if there's an audience out there for this. So we're not going to give you the budget that you would traditionally get to shoot a film with us. And Hitchcock goes, okay, that's fine. All right. I give me my budget. And the way he figured out to shoot it faster and cheaper was to shoot it with his television team from Alfred Hitchcock Presents at Universal. In fact, to double down on doing it cheaply, they did all the exteriors, the Bates Motel and the house where Mother Bates lives, on the Universal backlot.
Wow.
So, yeah, I mean, the Paramount actually got a better movie because they gave him less money. But anyway, all right, so we now jump ahead to The Birds. That's an enormous success for Universal when it comes out in March of 1963. And this is why Universal decides they really enjoyed, for example, the tram tour. People would get all excited about, oh, wow, we're here where they shoot that TV show we love and watch at home, Alfred Hitchcock Presents. So they're like, Alfred, would you like a permanent home here in Hollywood? And so, and Hitchcock says yes. So in 1964, Universal signs a long-term contract with Hitch, which effectively says from now on, you're only making movies for us. And to seal the deal, they set Alfred up with a spacious bungalow on the lower lot. By the way, bungalow 5195. And if you take the Glamour Tram tour today, as you're driving through the lower lot, the guides on this tour will always make a point of pointing out Hitchcock's old digs as you roll by. In fact, they've got his caricature on the side of the building to make it that much easier to identify. And it's out of this building on the lower lot, Eric, that Alfred makes his next 5 films. We get Marnie, which comes out in July of 64. We get Torn Curtain, 66. Topaz in 69. Frenzy in 72. And then finally, April of 1976, we get his last film, Family Plot. And every one of those films goes out into theaters under the Universal Pictures banner. And okay, I'm not going to lie here. They may not stack up with the truly great Hitchcock movies, Rear Window, Vertigo, North by West, Strangers on a Train. But Universal was justly proud of the fact that, right up until Hitch effectively retired from filmmaking in May of '79, he was dealing with kidney cancer, and we lost him less than a year later in April of 1980. This man only made movies for Universal. And so, again, for Universal Orlando to claim that Alfred Hitchcock was closely associated with Universal Pictures for 43 years, kind of stretching it.
Right. Take the word closely out, maybe, right?
Yeah, all right. Again, honestly, from 55, if you're a fan of the Alfred Hitchcock Presents TV show, or from 59, when he shot Psycho on the Universal backlot, this was where this very talented, but also complicated, creative, spent, well, depending on how you count, either the last quarter century of his career or at least the last 2 decades. By the way, quick side story here. After E.T., the extraterrestrial, was such an enormous success in the summer of 1982, by the way, Universal Pictures release, Steve Ross, who was then the head of Warner Brothers, made a play to have Steven Spielberg, who, again, had almost exclusively made movies for Universal Pictures since Sugarland Express was first released back in March of 1974. Steve wanted to sell Spielberg on the idea of move over to Warner's, do all of your future productions here. So Steve starts piling up the money, which, not going to lie, catches Spielberg's eye for a while. But Lou Wasserman, the then head of Universal, he knows that Spielberg's already got more money than he could ever spend in his lifetime. Which is why, to convince Steven to stay at Universal, Wasserman makes a very canny play. He attempts to appeal to Steven's ego. So he takes him to lunch in the Universal commissary, of course. And this is in 1985, Eric. And he says to Steven, well, Universal has only done this once before. We given a filmmaker a permanent home on our lower lot. And that was Alfred Hitchcock. And Spielberg now starts to get excited. You're going to give me a bungalow? And Wasserman's like, better. We're going to build you a brand new one. And this thing, Eric, when we finally get you out to Universal, now mind you, tells you about Steven's power within Universal, that the tram tour drives right by Hitchcock's bungalow, where as Steven Spielberg compound. All right, that's in the distance. You can see it as you make a turn, but the tram ain't going by Stevens thing. But it's a beautiful 2-story tall structure built in the Santa Fe style. It's made out of adobe brick, decorated with these gorgeous Native American rugs. Has a state-of-the-art screening room, and I can tell you this because back in 2006, the folks at DreamWorks gave me a private screening of the work-in-progress version of their movie Over the Hedge in that room. In fact, thanks to Barney Arnold, who set that up, a great lady. Wow. But I got to tour the place, and it was like, oh, I understand why Steven loved this place. But at the same time, Steven got a little concerned as they were building the thing, because it's like, oh, everybody in Hollywood's going to think I'm a pretentious ass. This is too extravagant, too expensive. And Wasserman's response to it was like, Steven, what we're basically spending to build this thing is what E.T. made in film rentals just in the country of Venezuela. We're going to be fine. All right. Don't worry about it. Right. So Spielberg actually takes an active role in the design of the place. I mean, he goes down to New Mexico with a Polaroid and a camera, and then comes back with like 500 shots that he throws at the architect. Could you make it like this? And it's like, oh, you're a pain. But they take the ideas into consideration, and they're all in the building. But again, I love that. Again, Hitchcock gets a bungalow where Spielberg had, and still has, by the way, a compound. And speaking of which, one of the reasons he still has a compound at Universal, he just re-upped his deal with Universal July of this past year, 2023. So when you consider Sugar Land Express went into theaters in March of 1973, Spielberg has been making movies for Universal for over 50 years now, Eric.
Wow.
Yeah, and
that's hard to believe, but
and
I mean,
and
that's math.
he's still working there. His production company, Amblin, is making Jurassic World Rebirth, which Universal Pictures, under the direction of Gareth Edwards, the guy who did Rogue One, my favorite of the Disney Star Wars films. That's coming out next summer with Scarlett Johansson and Mahershala Ali leading the cast. Again, be out in July of next year, July 2nd, 2025. And then the kicker, and think about this, Steven Spielberg is turning 78 this December. And as I mentioned earlier in the show, we lost Alfred Hitchcock at the age of 80. All right. But, and he effectively stepped away from directing due to health reasons. But this year, Spielberg begins working on a film that he's personally directing for Universal. It is it's an event film for the studio. It will be out in theaters in May of 2026, May 15th. Mark your calendars, folks, because this is Spielberg returning to a topic that he's made two great films about already, Close Encounters of a Third Kind and E.T. He's going back to UFOs, Eric. So I can't wait.
Well, maybe we'll go back to the Green Planet. Maybe that's what we're getting.
No. No.
All right, Jim, for your sake, hopefully it is not the Green Planet. I did hear that this was like a hush-hush project. Like there's not a lot of information about it.
Very much.
So I don't know. That makes it super intriguing to me. So let's hope it is the next Close Encounter. Or
I hope so. Because, by the way, I know this is a Universal podcast. But if you want to see an absolutely wonderful documentary, head on over to Disney Plus. Have you seen this thing, Music by John Williams?
Oh, I've seen it. I've been wanting to watch it.
Oh, it's wonderful. And it just talks about how, for example, there's a great story in this where Williams plays for Spielberg for the very first time to score for Jaws. And he's like, that's it? Chopsticks? It's like, dun. But no, definitely check that out. There's lots of great Universal history there. There's lots of stuff for Star Wars fans as well. But yeah, cannot wait for Spielberg to get back to making movies about UFOs. But at the same time, the notion of these two great filmmakers who made their homes at Universal, and again, if you take the tram tour, you can see Alfred's place, and you can look off at the distance at the Spielberg compound. So.
Right, and it's so he's actually going to be around longer, 50 years. So he should probably get his own making of, and we'll tear down something and put in a Spielberg, or just what I think, just keep E.T. And I believe that is his wishes. That's keep E.T. I think that's why it's still there. I think there's a story there.
No, I won't lie to you. There was a plan once upon a time for the kid zone in Orlando that was going to become the Nintendo land. But in order to make that work, they needed to put the Mario Kart ride inside of ET. And Stephen, it was a very polite but very firm, no, find someplace else. ET stays.
You heard screaming from his compound.
There we go.
Santa Fe.
There we go.
No, well, let's keep him safe. Keep Steven Spielberg safe. As long as he's safe, so is E.T. And that's my lasting cry.
Okay, there we go. And with that, I guess we've come to yet another installment of the Epic Universal podcast. So, but as always, folks, we love to hear from you. If you have any questions or comments, we use that stuff for fodder for shows, so feel free to reach out. And speaking of which, Eric, if people are looking to reach out to you, how can they do so?
You can find me on X or Instagram at Eric Hersey, and I will give you my full Wicked review as soon as we see the movie. How about you, Jim?
Well, you can find me on Twitter or X and Instagram as Jim Hill Media, and over on Facebook as Jim Hill Media News. And Okay, folks, so I guess that's going to do it for this week. And just in advance here, because this is our show before Thanksgiving, here's hoping that you and yours have a very happy holiday. And Eric and I will be back on Black Friday, right?
That's it. We're going to talk about everything, Jim.
Okay.
All the deals, all the TV deals that you're going to get, all the advertising. We'll clip newspaper articles with you to tell you what the coupons are.
Well, there we go. Okay.
That's our tradition.
Okay. Well, thanks again for listening, folks, and stick around. We've got a thing coming up right now that will tell you what else is going on here this month at the Jim Hill Media Podcast Network. Thanks for listening to today's episode. And if you like what you heard, head on over to Apple Podcasts and give us a review. This really helps get the word out about our shows. We also have some other shows on the network that you might like. Each week, we drop a brand new Disney dish with Len Testa or animation and movie news. Please listen to Fine Tuning with Drew Taylor. By the way, you can also check out Drew's other podcasts, like The Fuse, the official Mission Impossible podcast, which he does with Charles Hood. For all things Lucasfilm, why don't you subscribe to Looking at Lucasfilm with Brian Gahn? Likewise, we have I Want That Too with the lovely Lauren Hersey, our weekly podcast that features the latest merch and the stories behind that merch. And our Epic Universal podcast takes a look at the Universal theme park. So please join Eric Hersey and I on that weekly. If you enjoy theme park history, we also host Manufacturing the Magic with Shelley and Noah Valladolid. That podcast tells the story of how we got the modern theme parks that we enjoy today. Join myself, Len Testa, and veteran Imagineer Jim Schul for our latest season of Disney Unpacked, our first ever video series exclusively for Patreon. These get released first Sunday of every month, and each month we release several exclusive podcasts to help support this video series. I want to thank everyone that supports the Jim Hill Media Network. For more information about podcasts and content, head on over to jimhillmedia.com. So that's going to do it for now, folks. Thanks again for listening, and we will catch up on the next show.